Welcome to Real Vision's Trade Ideas. Today we're sitting down with Guy Cerundolo of Cerundolo Investment Research. It is great to have you back.
Great to be back, thank you.
So could you take us through what it is you're looking at right now in the markets?
Sure, so Brazil.
Okay.
So the thing that's really intriguing with Brazil, that about a year ago, it emerged from a multi-year base, 10-year base to be exact. It had a nice rally, a pullback and a test, which held nicely. And since then, it's just been in a strong uptrend, great momentum. And the thing that caught my eye is that there's a US ETF, the EWZ, that had set up beautifully on my work last month, which I had put a note out to my clients, and I gave a few stock ideas to play the Brazil theme on the long side.
Now, a lot of your research is based on a proprietary model that you have. Could you walk us through the model, the money flow units, as well as how you actually go about measuring supply and demand there?
Sure. So what I will say is, what I do is I look at long-term trends of an asset. So in the case of, let's say, even the EWZ, it had a big decline off of 2009 low, almost a 10-year decline. And then what I look for is important inflection points to see if there's a downside to target that's been achieved based on the money flow unit work. And then if there's demand coming into that asset. In the case of, let's say, the EWZ, after so much time, what happens is there's a way of measuring the demand buildup, and it's based on a little bit of time, but more so price action. And then there's a little bit of math involved, but the base pattern itself helps to project upside targets. So it's based on long-term patterns and then superimpose what the short term is doing after in the case of the EWZ, the troughing period is unfolding.
Okay, so could you break down where we are right now with Brazil, so whether it be the money flow units as well as what sort of cycle, bullish cycle or bearish cycle you see?
Exactly. So first, from a simplistic point of view, and even a one-eye technician with a crooked ruler could see that the Bovespa has a phenomenal long-term base and a great trend coming out of it. So the thing that caught my eye in terms of a couple of ways to play it was the EWZ. That broke almost a 10-year downtrend. It had a bullish money flow base that was formed, and what triggered it, just to confirm, was the break of the downtrend, which happened last month. That's when I sent my note out. And then what I do as well is I do this for clients, and I've done it for the portfolios that we ran at Wellington, long and long short. I put an index in a model that I've put together a number of years back. It's a multi-factor model where the most important inputs are the relative performance of that stock to its benchmark. So I look at price trend, price momentum, relative momentum, and a bunch of other factors. So in the case of the EWZ, which is made up of 55 stocks, I put all the components in a model and then rank them. And of the top 10 names, 70% have buy ratings on them. They're very favorable. And in the case of how to play it with Brazil, not only the EWZ, which helps an investor not incur stock-specific risk, for someone that wants to play a couple of individual equities, which look very good on my work, Itaú and Banco Bradesco BBD.
Now, going back to the EWZ, could you give us some of the levels that you're looking at, as well as potential timing?
Sure. As I said before, the timing in many cases is a little bit difficult to ascertain, but in the case of the EWZ, the first target is at 54, which is 18% from here. And then there's a longer-term target, which is an MFU3 at 66, which is around 47%. So that is at 6 months, 8 months. It's hard to say, but the point is there's an important inflection of the long-term trend. The internals of the EWZ, where the majority of the components are very, very good in terms of momentum and price trend and relative performance. So I think it's going to be sustainable, that we're going to see really good upside.
Would you put a stop loss on this?
Well, in the case of the EWZ, I would think the trend off of the 2016 low, roughly around 37, 38, would negate the call.
And in terms of some of the specific stocks that you're looking at, what levels are you considering there?
So in the case of Itaú, the first target is 1050, which is about 9% from here. That's the short-term target. And the longer-term target is $12, which is 23%. And the thing that I'll say about both stocks, Itaú and Banco Bradesco, is that each stock I use regression trend channels to help define short and intermediate-term trends, and I have alerts when these channels are broken. So both stocks had broken their short-term regression trend channels on the upside. So we had that in place. We had the stocks were starting to trade above their 50 and 200-day moving averages. They were upward sloping, which is bullish in terms of defining trend. That goes into the model as well. And then the majority of my clients are benchmarked against the All Country World Index, the ACWI. And the relative performance of the EWZ is positive, and of these two stocks, it's really good.
And so then would you consider putting a stop loss on these stocks as well?
For sure. I mean, what would change the long-term picture? I would have to say using a 200-day on both stocks as a stop would be sufficient.
And then in terms of upside target on BBD, what are you looking at?
For BBD, the initial upside target is 11.75, which is a little over 14%. And that would be an MFU3. And then the longer-term target is $14, roughly 36% from here.
Now, some of the charts you were looking at were log scale. Could you explain why that's important in this case?
Well, when you're looking at long-term charts that say 8 to 10 years and beyond, it just puts things in proportion in terms of percentage moves. So it's a good way to look at long-term charts where there's a lot of volatility with log charts.
Now, in terms of risks, I know you're looking specifically at the technicals and not necessarily, say, the political environment of Brazil. Does that factor in at all here, or you're just ignoring that?
It doesn't come into the mix of,
Okay.
because we're with the money flow work, you're trying to measure flow. You're trying to measure where money's treated right, and if the trend is up, if more of the components of that index are looking good, you know that there's appetite to be involved there. So as it stands now, it looks bullish on its own merit of price action.
And then in terms of risks, is there a percentage term that you can give to us that this will likely work out or not work out based on your experience?
I think given what I'm seeing on the overall Bovespa, the setup in the EWZ, but also the components, I mean, there is some retailers and there are a couple of other financials that are looking really good. I think there's enough of the internal bottom-up analysis showing that this should be sustainable. And I think the odds of a sustainable bigger move, I would have to put it north of 70%.
Can you break down all three of these trades in 30 seconds?
Yep. So given the backdrop of a bullish Bovespa emerging from a 10-year base, I think investors that want to get involved could either play a not stock-specific risk of buying a basket, and that's the EWZ. But then two of my top favorite names within the EWZ and are large components of the EWZ would be Itaú and Banco Bradesco.
Great. Guy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So Guy is bullish on Brazil. Specifically, he likes buying the iShares MSCI Brazil ETF at current levels with an initial target at 54 and a secondary target at 66. His stop loss for the trade is 38. Guy is also interested in a few specific stocks within the ETF. Specifically, he suggests buying ticker symbol ITUB at current levels. His initial target price is $10.50 with a secondary target of 12 and a stop loss at the 200-day moving average. He also suggests buying ticker symbol BBD at current levels with an initial target price of $11.75 and a secondary target of 14. His stop loss for the trade would also be at the 200-day moving average. Just remember, this is a trade idea and not investment advice. You should do your own research, consider your risk tolerance, and invest accordingly. For Real Vision, I'm Justine Underhill.